Greetings, and happy new days, beloved. Welcome to the best days of your life. And today we are discussing shadow work. What is shadow work? What is shadow? First off, what is shadow, right? Shadow is a psychological term used to describe our personality that is hidden from us. It is described as the dark side of us, right? So let's dive in. So first, I would like to pay attention to Carl Jung, and this is a psychiatrist from Switzerland. He was born in 1875, the late 1800s, but most of his most profound works were introduced in the early 1900s, right? And so what Carl Jung said about shadow work is that the shadow refers to the dark, disowned aspects of us. So Carl found that this dark side of us, right, this shadow of us was unknown to us. That we, not only was it unknown, that we disassociated ourselves from it. And typically the reason why we disassociate ourselves from this shadow of ourselves, or from this shadow personality, is typically because it has negative implications, right? So our dark side of us is the side that carries the envy, the jealousy, it carries the hate, if you will, right? So the very dark side of us is typically the side that we try our best to hide from people, right? So having that jealousy streak, that is not something that we typically just show to others, right? This is something that we hide and keep to ourselves, and that's why it is known as the dark aspects of us. So what Carl Jung said is, the shadow is a part of us that we don't like to accept that we have. It is common for people to deny its existence, right? And so what I notice is, the more you accept that aspect of you, the more that you know that that aspect of you exists, and you give acknowledgement to that aspect of you, it allows for you to work on it, right? So when you feel yourself becoming jealous, when you feel yourself becoming envy of someone, it may be a friend, it may be someone that you don't even know on a personal level, but you're envious of what they have, you're jealous of what they have, and you don't acknowledge it, that is when this can be very threatening to yourself, because you're denying that it even exists. So it's hard for you to acknowledge and deal with it because you're denying it. But when you take the time to really pay attention to yourself, become more intimate with yourself, right? And becoming more intimate with yourself allows for you to understand and acknowledge all aspects of you, even the parts that are not so good. So when you acknowledge, ooh, that was a jealous thought, you're being envious. When you notice that and you acknowledge it, you actually are giving yourself more power. You're giving yourself more power because you know that the thought or the emotions that you and feelings that you have are from a negative place. You know, they're from envy, they're from jealous, they're from hateful places. And so you want to acknowledge that, because it gives you the opportunity to change it. And we cannot change things about our personality. We cannot change traits and characteristics about ourselves until we acknowledge that they even exist, right? So while one might have different elements, right? So we know that our dark side, right, this dark side of us, that shadow of us, right, although it may have elements of sadness, rage, laziness, cruelty, there might be other aspects there too that we are not acknowledging that are powerful to us, right? I find that some of us, our confidence is in the shadow of us, right? We don't have it in the forefront. It's in the shadow. It's somewhere just stuck on top of so many other things. And those other things are typically things that taken place in our childhood years that we haven't acknowledged, we simply have buried. And burying it does not solve the problem. So this is why we are working to understand our shadow. We are working to understand our hidden personality traits that are negative, that create a lot of separation between us and our divine self. Because we know our divine self is not full of guilt. Our divine self is not full of hatred. It's not full of jealousness and envy and laziness. That is not our divine conscious self, right? We know that we are so much more bigger than those aspects and elements. So what we do know is the more you tap into acknowledging that those things exist, you can deal with it. But if you ignore that they even exist, they stay in the shadow of you, right? And something that is in the shadow of you that you give no attention to, no light to, can be threatening to what it is that you truly want, can be threatening to what it is that you want from this experience. And this is why we do shadow work. So the shadow, sometimes it's hard to accept, and that's the reason why we disown it, right? And when I say it's hard to accept, sometimes it's hard to be honest with yourself and say, yes, that was a very envious and jealous thought and emotion to have. How can you change that? So instead, we just disown it. We say, no, I didn't have a jealous thought. I didn't have an envious thought. And that's why this is in the shadow of us. Because sometimes if you don't realize that you're having these thoughts, they can threaten your entire existence. So back to Carl Jung. Something that he said is that the shadow is thought to represent the animal instincts within us as humans. He referred to the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. No wish to be. Because, I mean, come on, let's be honest. How hard is it for you to admit, like, oh, I was being jealous. I was being so hateful. I was hating on that girl. She really wasn't a problem to me. That is hard for a lot of us to acknowledge and say, right? Because we're so stuck in the ego. But when you're moving past the ego and you're acknowledging what I could have did differently, it's going to require you to look at those traits that aren't so healthy, that aren't so good for you, that are negative. It's going to require for you to look at those traits and see, what is it I can do differently? And to me, shadow work is something that you do for a lifetime. It's not going to be something that you're going to work on for a couple of months and you're just going to surpass. No, the shadow work is going to always be there. It's something for us to work on for eternity, right? Because sometimes one aspect or one negative element of your shadow, it can change. You can work on it, right? But something else can come up. As the days go by, as the years go by, something else can come up. It can be something as simple as, let's say you have a sibling and you and this sibling, y'all are great, doing great, having a great time. Y'all don't have any personal issues that you know of, and you love this individual. Let's just say that the parent of you guys decides to give that particular child a lump sum of money for whatever reasons, and you don't receive it. All of a sudden, you can begin to have these hateful, envious feelings and emotions against this sibling just because of the gift that they have received. This is why shadow work is something that will always exist, because we don't know what things are going to come up in life that is going to require you to go back in, look at those negative elements of the personality, look at those traits that you can work on and change to proceed forward. Okay? So, like I always like to say, this journey is for a lifetime. This journey is for eternity. There is no there's no end, right? There's no end. There's like, you're not gonna run through this red tape and everyone's gonna cheer and say, congratulations, you are officially your higher self. It doesn't work like that. We are always doing the work, planning the work, and doing the work. We're always doing that, right? So when we recognize and face our shadow, we become more whole and balanced. And why is that? Once I recognize that, hey, I have this conflict within myself, it allows for me to address it. I cannot address something that I don't even acknowledge exists. And a lot of times, that's what most of our problem is: no accountability. I want to blame everybody else. No accountability, right? So the more you say, hey, I'm acknowledging and understanding my anger. I'm acknowledging and understanding my fear. I'm acknowledging and understanding my guilt and laziness and all these other negative elements of ourselves. It allows for you to make changes where changes need to be made. Okay? So facing our sadness, our weaknesses, our laziness is going to give you a greater sense of peace and happiness, right? This is when we experience triumph. So the challenge is acknowledging those emotions, adhering to those emotions. When I say adhering to it, seeing where you can make changes, seeing where you can do things differently. When I feel myself ever being jealous of someone else, oh, I nip it in the bud quickly. What? Stop that. Because if you want it, you can have it. Right? And I acknowledge those feelings. I acknowledge those emotions versus hiding them and saying that they don't exist. Because if I hide them, I say they don't exist, then I'm never truly accepting the true me and what I am about, right? And I want to, right? I have the desire to tap into that higher self. So that desire to tap into that higher self involves me acknowledging all aspects of me. The parts that I love the most and the parts that I need to do better in. And so I acknowledge, okay, I could benefit from changing my way of thinking. I could benefit from really acting and moving from a place of pure love frequency. So this is just an introduction to shadow work. The knowledge goes so deep that we're gonna be talking about this for a lifetime, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share to a friend who could use this information as well, who are actively on their journey. They're like, look, I'm tapping into my higher self. I'm tapping into my divine being. I am tapping into that 5D thinking, right? We tapping into the purest frequency of love. That is what we're doing, right? And the universe is taking all of that, multiplying it and sending it right back to us. So here's to our prosperous lives. Here's to our good health, our good wealth. Here is to our family and friends. Here's to the increase. Here is to the magnitude of our beings. And here is to the best days of your life. And I see you soon.